So we don't have to worry about rain right now. And today is just a little different because there are several students and classes here from the Erie School District. A little bit of history and civics kind of rolled into one. So we're going to get started, and first to join us is Chaplain Russ Moran from the Westridge Fire Department.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, on this 17th anniversary of the attacks in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania, may all of us remember with love and compassion those who died that day, including our brother firefighters, police officers, and first responders. We also remember those who have taken ill or died since these senseless attacks. We grieve with those who still mourn, share memories with those who cannot forget. May we draw strength from those who bravely responded and gave their lives to save others. We stand with strangers who became neighbors that day. And yet, above all, God, may we remember your faithfulness and learn to trust in your unfailing love. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today as we come together to reflect on the events, the tragic events of 17 years ago. Today, I'd like to especially acknowledge those in uniform that are with us. We honor you today as we think about the brave men and women, your fallen brothers and sisters, who were the real heroes of that tragic day. For most of us, the events of September 11th, 2001 are steeped in our memories. We remember where we were, what we saw, and how we felt. But for many of you here today, September 11th, 2001 is a moment in history. Some of you were not born yet, or if you were too young to know what was happening or to understand it. I hope, I pray that you will never, ever experience an event like this in your lifetime. But it's important for you to hear about September 11th and understand what it means, to make it more than just a chapter in history book. September 11th forever changed this nation and we as a people. And to truly understand where we're going, soon led by your generation, you must understand where we've been. Even now, you can take some of the lessons from September 11th and apply them to your own life. When we think of September 11th, we will always, always think of the heroes of that day and the days shortly after. The brave men and women, police, firefighters, paramedics, who ran toward danger in the interest of protecting their fellow citizens. The first responders and recovery teams who spent countless hours toiling at the wreckage of Ground Zero, sacrificing for many their own health. The soldiers and sailors who enlisted to serve our nation in this time of great need. And the ordinary citizens, people like you and me, who lined up to give blood, to donate goods, to pray, and to comfort those affected. These heroes are not just part of history. They can serve as role models for all of us today. We might not face the decision to run toward danger, but we can all be everyday heroes, even in the smallest of ways. In our daily lives, at work, at home, at school, we might think, how can I help my classmate who is struggling? How can I serve my community to make it better? How can I join others in working for the greater good of everyone? For even in these small ways, we remember September 11th, and that is how we honor the victims and the heroes of that day. That is so, so very important. To do that, we have to work together. People of my generation and your parents' generations, we can make sure we do our part to share our experiences of that day, and young people like you can take the memories that we share and reflect on those stories, making them lessons that you carry into your future. And that's how we, as a community and as a society, can ensure that we move forward united. United as one Erie community, united as one United States of America, and united in our common purpose to create a world that honors the courage and the sacrifice of our fellow Americans on September 11, 2001. It is then that we together can transform one of the darkest days in our nation's history into a symbol of great strength, the goodwill and endurance of our people. May God continue to bless our community and continue to bless the United States of America. And we'll now have the posting of the colors.
Erie, out. Cadets, attention. Forward, march. Color guard, halt. Right, face. Present, arms.
I'd now like to have the students from the Erie High Schools, Erie High and Collegiate Academy to join me in leading us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ordered, arms.
Good.
Right, face. Forward, march.
Now have Laura Grappy come up and say a few words. Laura, who spent many days at Ground Zero after September 11th. Laura.
Good morning. History offers the education to study the journey of humanity. History represents the triumph and tragedy of the American spirit. 9/11 left us with a history sometimes hard to imagine. 2,977 lives were lost on 9/11, ranging in age from 2 to 80 years old. 1,642 remains were identified from the World Trade Center site. As of July, only 60%. The unidentified remains were returned to the 9/11 Museum to be kept in a repository until more sophisticated DNA testing can be done. 102 minutes passed between the first attack and the collapse of the North Tower. 6,205 days have passed since my 9/11 journey began. In that time, 2,804 9/11 responders have died, with 700 waiting for verification. Last year, 163 died of 9/11 cancer. One responder dies every 2 days and 7 hours. More than 88,000 responders and survivors are sick, and as each responder or survivor dies, their oral histories become their legacy. On this 17th anniversary, I look back and remember my response to the World Trade Center, lobbying Congress and our Senate to enact legislation to provide medical monitoring and treatment for 9/11 responders, and assisting to build Erie's 9/11 Memorial. I fought 9/11 cancer 5 times and survived radical neck dissection. The race with 9/11 illness does not have a finish line, but I will always continue to write my history. For our students that are here today, thank you for taking the time to be here and learning about 9/11. But more importantly, I ask you today to learn of the humanity in 9/11. Each responder, every survivor has a story. They did not ask to write this history, but they did it with dignity and grace. They wrote the history of their lives. Now it is your turn. I ask each one of you to step outside your comfort zone to make a difference in your school and in your community. And when you're comfortable there, I want you to step again. Write the history of your life, create a legacy to inspire others, but always give hope to the hopeless. Within the National 9/11 Museum, an inscription scrolls across the wall that reads, "No day shall ever erase you from the memory of time." The history of 9/11 happened that fateful day. but the legacy of 9/11 came in the days and the weeks that followed. It was told in the lives lost, the survivors, and the responders.
A young people's chorus.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red cloud, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
In every generation, there's a singular event in history that marks time. One that no matter how hard you might try, you cannot forget. The September 11th terrorist attacks were a unifying event for modern Americans. Nothing else comes close. In a recent survey conducted by the Pew Research Center, 76% of all Americans include 9/11 as one of the 10 most unforgettable events during their lifetime. This spans every demographic group and people from all generations, from the pre-World War II through the millennials, college graduates through high school dropouts, every race and religion. We know about the heroes, the 343 firefighters who didn't return, and the 69 law enforcement personnel who did what they could to control and evacuate people, and they likewise did not return. But there were hundreds of others we'll never know about. A hero can be defined as an ordinary person with an ordinary skill or ability, just like everyone here today. But they use the ordinary to do extraordinary things. To help someone down the stairs, to assist them when running from the imminent collapse of the buildings. Eventually the smoke cleared and the debris was no longer falling. Then they emerged through the dust and over the rubble. Average Americans with one bond: to do whatever they could to help find, rescue, or recover those lost. There were thousands of them. Literally thousands, no, tens of thousands, collectively known as responders. Each and every one has a story to tell of their horrifying experiences doing what they set out to do. And it's not appropriate for anyone, including myself, to repeat their stories. So I have found and edited a few audio programs so you can hear them directly.
The problem that came up was that our society began to look at the responders in terms of their disease. They became an issue in terms of their liability. And my feeling was that that's not who the responders were. Let's find out who they are as human beings, what their motivation was, what values they had, what sacrifices they made, how they were able to renew themselves. It was almost like taking a civics class as to what is important about being a citizen. What is important?
No one could possibly know 9/11 the way these people do. We asked several of the responders to give us a sense of the hours of testimony that they've put into Dr. Love's project.
The debris and the people rushing out at us, I couldn't even make it to Tower 1. I made it to the base of Tower 2. This big, brawly FBI guy had his shield around his neck. And I looked up at him, and he's telling there's about 6 officers there with me. And he's like, if you want to live, you might as well leave now. He said, we're all going to die. I'm like, we can't leave. I'm not leaving. And the officers that I were there with, we're not leaving either. And we continued to evacuate and do our jobs. But, we were all like, wow, we're going to die,
More than 6,000 responders enrolled in his World Trade Center health program. One study shows that nearly a third of those who worked at Ground Zero have asthma. 42% suffer with sinusitis. Nearly 40% have gastroesophageal reflux disease known as GERD. And many have reactive airways dysfunction syndrome that the patients just call RADS. Luft listened to their stories in the examining room for 8 years when he realized that his patients were the authors of one of the most dramatic chapters of American history.
The building imploded down. It blew me out of the building. And I was able to hold on to the doorway with my left arm.
Who are these people?
So of course we have the firemen and the policemen and the EMS workers. And then we have the volunteer firemen. And then you have the iron workers and the construction workers and the laborers. On 9/11, all Americans responded from all walks of life.
I was a senior in high school. Realized that I have to go down there. I don't know how I'm going to help. I don't know what I can do.
My whole family is cops. I'm the 13th in my family to be a New York City police officer.
I am a licensed massage therapist. I just felt like I had to be down there helping these people, knowing what I do for a living can help these people.
Like this, and
those of us who wear uniforms make a living out of the worst 10 minutes of everybody's lives. 9/11 was a hell of a lot longer than 10 minutes long. Post-traumatic stress is something that I have an issue with. Spent a month after being caught in the collapse, waking up on the floor, trying to feel my way out of my own bedroom. That went on for over a month.
This is Tyree Bacon in the Oral History Project, remembering a woman who grabbed him by the shirt as one of the towers fell.
I told her, I said, sweetheart, don't worry, I promise we're getting out of here. Well, I flat out lied to her. I thought we were gonna die where we were. If I didn't have her, I probably would have curled up in a fetal position and just waited to die.
These men and women to the left and right of me and behind me, they're the best of the best of what America offered 10 years ago. We can't change history. And through their eyes, they're telling America what they've seen, what they did, and what they're going through 10 years later. And that is priceless.
One thing I want to say, the real heroes out of this stuff are dead.
Thank you, absolutely.
They're not here. Nobody here is a hero. We just did what everybody else did. The true heroes are people who went into those buildings and they never made it out.
Every mode of transportation out of Manhattan was shut down. All the subways were shut. The tunnels were all closed. They closed the bridges. They closed everything immediately.
Boats, usually an afterthought in most New Yorkers' minds, were for the first time in over a century the only way in or out of Lower Manhattan.
So we decided to make the call on the radio. All available boats. This is the United States Coast Guard aboard the pilot boat New York. Anyone want to help with the evacuation of Lower Manhattan? Report to Governor's Island.
When that call came on the radio, they were coming.
I was uncertain of who was going to respond. About 15, 20 minutes later, there are just boats all across the horizon.
Literally 100 targets converging on the lower part of Manhattan.
When we came out of that dust cloud, tugboats
I've never seen so many tugboats all at once.
There was just like a fleet of tugboats headed to Manhattan.
If it floated and it could get there, it got there.
All different size, shapes, and form. I mean, and they were zooming across this water.
Ferries, private boats, party boats.
I worked on the water for 28 years. I've never seen that many boats come together at one time that fast. One radio call and it just came together just that fast.
And then out of nowhere, you just kept on seeing people coming.
They looked like zombies coming through the fog, and you knew that those were human beings.
Some of these people never been in the water, never been on a boat before.
Housewives, workers that do windows. We had executives. And the thing that was the best, everyone helped everyone.
I want you to hold my hand, come on board. Get inside. One at a time. Get inside.
I saw 4 businessmen lifting up an old woman with a seeing eye dog, a German Shepherd, and they lifted her up like a surfboard and passed her over the handrails. You couldn't have planned nothing to happen that fast, that quick.
No training. This was just people doing what they had to do that day.
You forget all about what you're supposed to do, what they teach you in school, and you say, you know what? Morally, this is the right way to go, and deep down, this is what I'm gonna do.
Average people, they stepped up, and when they needed to, they showed me, you know, when the American people need to come together and pull together, they will do it.
I do feel a way honored that I was a part of it.
That was the greatest thing I ever did with my life.
The greatest day that I've ever seen in all my boating. I mean, my life on the water.
The Great Boat Lift of 9/11 became the largest sea evacuation in history. Larger than the evacuation of Dunkirk in World War II, where 339,000 British and French soldiers were rescued over the course of 9 days. On 9/11, nearly 500,000 civilians were rescued from Manhattan by boat. It took less than 9 hours.
I believe somebody has a little hero in them. You gotta look in, and it's in there. It'll come out. It need to be.
I have one theory in life. I never want to say the word I should have. If I do it and I fail, I tried. If I do it and I succeed, better for me. And I tell my children the same thing. Never go through life saying you should have. If you want to do something, you do it.
Next is Jim Rosenbaum. He's the Deputy Chief of Westridge Fire Department.
Good morning. I've been asked to come here today to focus my thoughts to the young people that are with us today, the people that were possibly not even born on 9/11, and to say a few words about public safety services, and in particular fire service. And for you young people, you might be at a crossroads in your life as far as making decisions about the path that the rest of your life should take. And I would like to encourage you to consider a career in public service, whether it would be with the fire department, in law enforcement, in emergency medical services, or in the military. It's one of the things that you can do that is just life-changing. And each and every day you can make a difference in people's lives. I was asked to say as far as firefighters, what we do every day. And it's very simple, whether it's an avocation, such as with the volunteer fire department that I'm from, or a vocation such as we have with representatives from the Erie Fire Department. We do the same things every day. We answer calls for help that people place to the 911 center. Most of the time in the most difficult and stressful times of their lives. And we do that day in and day out, every day of the year. Many of these calls are very difficult on us, whether it's fires, whether it's emergency medical calls, and we trudge on and we help the public the best as we can, much like the 343 firefighters were doing that day on 9/11. Why did I become a fireman? Well, it was very, very simple. Two things. I wanted to be able to help our community, and I wanted to be able to do something that was very unique that not many people do. And indeed, 40 years ago, when I started, and every day since, I do things that most people never get an opportunity to do. I'm challenged physically, I'm challenged mentally, I'm challenged in just about every way that you can imagine. But every call is different, and every call is very rewarding. In many cases, in fact, in most cases, we can see the difference that we make in people's lives almost immediately. So if you're one of the kind of people that are into being able to observe instant results and instant gratification, this is certainly something that you ought to consider doing. And as I said, whether you do it as a career or whether you do it simply to volunteer your services to your community, please get involved. There's just nothing more important than helping out your fellow human being. And next, I was asked to talk about what the 343 means. Well, the 343 firefighters that day, it's easy to lump them all into one and say 343. But you've got to understand that that was 343 individuals who went to work that morning without any knowledge, of course, that that would be the last time that they reported for their tours. And the 343 that perished that day had families, had friends, had loved ones, and this is like a tsunami that washed over the whole country when these 343 passed away that day. I think most everybody here was issued a small flag, and at this particular time I would like to invite everybody to place that flag in the ground wherever you're standing in commemoration of the lives lost on that day.
Stick in the ground.
Thank you.
And let's just observe a moment of silence before we have our bagpipers.
Tom, want to come up with a few words?
Margaret asked me a while ago,
what's significant about the bagpipes in the police department and the fire department. Sometime you ever get a chance to go to the Firefighters Museum down here, you'll see what I'm talking about. Back in the day, when all of our immigrants started coming to this country, and they came through Ellis Island, and they had to do it the right way. They had to have a sponsor, they had to have a job, and they had to be part of the community. When they came over here, they were brave, tough people from Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. They didn't know anything about not working hard. They were potato farmers, and they worked in the coal mines. What was the worst job in the United States at that time? Firefighters and police officers. The protection. Take a look at what a fire truck looked like back in the 1800s. Horses and buggies with water containers. So all these young, brave immigrants became policemen and firemen, and they would live in their houses, and they were very, very well versed in music. If you ever look at the Irish and the Scottish, you'll see that they not only play the bagpipe, but they play the fiddle, they play the penny whistle and the flute, and the accordions. So while they were sitting around in their firehouses on their off shifts, they would play and they would sing, because they're very entertaining people. So all of a sudden they decided that they would have bands, and they would march in parades for celebrations. And they formed the Emerald Societies, and you'll see them on TV today when you get home and watch the news, because they were playing this morning in New York City. And that's what they did. In the late 1978, the Royal Scottish Dragoon Guards discovered a tune we all know, which was the Southern Baptist tune that they sang, and it's called Amazing Grace, and they recorded that. It became a #1 selling record and album for almost a year. Who would have thought a bagpipe band would have a #1 record surpassing the Beatles? I know you guys don't know what the Beatles are. So the tradition carries on. I am a 24-year veteran and a senior officer retired from the United States Army. I have my own business. And to be president of this band, to be able to support the community, to be able to play for that brave police officer that just passed away a few weeks ago for the Erie Police Department, to play memorial service for veterans and all the first responders. Give us a call. That's what we're here for. We're here to support your endeavors and make sure you have a proper send-off for your heroes. So that's it in a nutshell, why the bagpipes are so important to first responders. So Mark, thank you.
And I'll bet a lot of people didn't know that. Next is Trooper Cindy Schick from the Pennsylvania State Police.
All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Trooper Cindy Schick. I'm the Community Service Officer at the Erie Station. I have just a little over 10 years on with our department. On September 11th, 2001, I was in 10th grade, like some of you guys are over here. Looking back, I remember seeing the news clips over and over, all over the news stations. As a 10th grader, I was educated on what took place and watched our community and country come together to support one another. Over the years, I have seen many changes due to this horrific terrorist attack. Before I graduated high school, I decided that I wanted to go into a career which I could give back to my community by helping them. Many lives were lost on this day, and thanks to the first responders who ran towards the danger, many were also saved. It's an honor to be up here in front of all of you and speak to you guys about this event. And it's very heartwarming to see the number of people that came out for this event as well. Being a first responder is something that all of us in a uniform take pride of. When one enters this field, you don't just become a police officer, you don't just become a firefighter or an EMT, you join a sister and a brotherhood where everyone has each other's back and you work together to save lives. This is more than just a career for us. This is our lifestyle. And for me, there is no other uniform I'd rather wear than this Pennsylvania State Police uniform. So as we remember the victims from September 11th, 2001, please also take the time and remember all the first responders and the military personnel who continue to put their uniforms on every day so we can live in peace here. Thank you.
And next is a Staff Sergeant, Private First Class Ryan Bisson. Sergeant First Class.
Thank you, it's a pleasure to be here.
On this day 17 years ago, our nation was transformed by the terrorist attacks conducted on September 11, 2001. And from the ashes of these attacks, America has galvanized a new generation of warriors who volunteered to serve our nation's armed forces. I remember being a young troop for the state's militia 17 years ago when the President of the United States asked all the governors to mobilize their state's National Guards in response to this effort. And that was in support of Operation Noble Eagle, so we did mobilize. All across America, state's National Guardsmen aligned themselves with local, state, and federal agencies to provide the armed forces to protect the home front, in addition to the role of deploying overseas to bring the fight back to the terrorists. Today, the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, along with law enforcement community, first responders, continues to remain vigilant, a relevant, and ready force. And today we honor the fallen and encourage a new generation of heroes.
Thank you. The legacy of 9/11. So many thousands of lives were forever altered. First responders who went in to save whoever they could, but didn't come out. Victims' families, many thousands of them, suddenly without a husband, a wife, a son, a daughter, a brother, sister, or other family member. Thousands without their closest friends. And then there were the responders. Those who went to ground zero after the towers collapsed to offer their help and assistance in so many multitudes of ways, never realizing that they were entering and working in a highly toxic and contaminated atmosphere. So now, years later, everyone involved with ground zero is showing signs of cancer and so many other blood and respiratory related diseases. People changed. Government changed. The United States changed. And the world changed. Each can describe in their own words what they've seen or experienced in the way of some form of change.
I think like all New Yorkers, I think about like before 9/11 and after 9/11, because I think before 9/11 we had a sense of invulnerability, that whatever happened out in the world, it wasn't going to come here. And now we know that's not true.
I was terrified of planes flying overhead, and I wouldn't fly for about, I think, 5 years. It was about 5 years. I'm surprised we haven't had a major attack since 9/11, but I am constantly on the lookout and a little bit more paranoid than I was previously.
In the airports, if I see a bag unattended, your heart starts racing, you get a little bit flustered, and you're looking for security to come and sort it out as soon as possible.
It's made me more sensitive to like security and a little bit more respectful of just procedure and the measures we have to take.
It hasn't changed my goals, it hasn't changed any of that, but it's changed my awareness of the differences of people.
When we heard about Al-Qaeda 9 years ago, we just thought about it as some organization that would never make it to our shores.
When you see like the most powerful country has that problem, then you start thinking about your own people and about how global we are.
9 years later, we realized that they made the world that much smaller, made people much more aware.
Every day is important, and you can die anytime by someone who wants to make a point.
It made us realize how life can be so short.
Your loved ones on Earth, like they're here the next minute, then they're gone. So you gotta appreciate them. Thank God that they're alive.
It made me more community minded, and also to think about my life. What am I here for? What is my purpose? Why do I work every day? It's got to be more.
I'd be able to forget it in my lifetime? I don't think so.
I still see that building in my mind. We are the guys that had pictures of it on our wall before 9/11. Construction guys who put it up.
Signed up for the Red Cross, and in the past that wouldn't have been something I had done, but I think that every time that there's like a big natural disaster, I try and be of service.
The great outpouring of kindness among New Yorkers. I've never seen people more accommodating, more willing, more caring than during that occasion. It's wonderful to have had a glimpse of that kindness and goodness in the people of New York.
I don't know how much it's changed the country. That's the problem.
I don't know. I don't know if it's really changed America, to be honest.
Patriotism abounded after 9/11. I think people were angrier.
So I'm not really sure.
It's thrown us into protracted wars.
You know, we're at war and everything, and nothing's really come out of that.
America has changed in the sense that there's more security. We know that.
America is now more aware that they do have an effect on other countries. Sometimes we kind of operate in our own bubble.
As a country, I think that we came together that day.
I think it did bring us together in a sense as a country, and we are America, but I think we lost that already in the 10 years.
It unified us. It changed us for the best. That's one thing about America. The harder you hit us, the harder we stand.
I mean, it was a terrible thing that happened, but what was great about the year was that everyone was so open and loving and caring and sharing, and that was just extraordinary.
I've watched as we mourned together and also celebrated together. We seem to be a little bit more unified. I just feel like we love each other more and we're willing to help each other more.
You know, we're hyper vigilant, there's anxiety, you know, there's fear.
It's like walking on eggshells, I guess. I mean, we're so alert. I mean, especially like right after it happened, you know, we're like quick to jump to things, and it's sad. It's a sad way to live, actually.
I think that it has had a tendency to make people a little bit more ethnocentric.
I think everyone is still healing. I mean, 10 years is a decade, but I think it takes longer than that.
We've had people be much more conservative in their thinking.
We want to continue having the freedoms, so we are there for each other and we will fight for it. Makes me stop and think about some of the things that I've witnessed and seen through my life when I see the flag and how grateful I am for our country and for our freedom.
I think love will prevail eventually. It's just a question of how long it's going to take.
To the high school students that are here, how many of you have seen the flag before, the 60-foot flag? Now you've all seen it. I would like to thank the Erie School District for working with the 9/11 Memorial to get you guys down here, and for the Junior ROTC, to the pipes and drums. Thank you to the Young People's Choir. Thank you to the Erie Fire Department and Westridge Fire Department for sending the trucks down, and the guys for putting this flag up. To the Erie County Library for hosting us. To the Brendel family, who they have possession of the flag that they let us borrow. To the county executives, to the Erie County Executive and her office and staff for working with me on this, the Erie 9/11 Memorial Committee, and to all the donors who made this event possible. And I'd like to wrap this up with a quote that I ran across a long time ago. And what it says is, what separates man from the animals, what separates man from the chaos, is the ability to mourn people you've never met. Thank you for coming.